I'm going to do my best in this video to explain a color mixing method that's called the mother method. You can see that I'm using a well-worn palette for mixing, and I'm not concerned with pure, clean pigments straight out of the tube or the pan. One thing to know about the mother method is that there are a few different ways that I've heard of to employ this method. And I'm only going to be showing you one of those ways, but I do want to first go over with you the other way or ways that I've heard about so that you'll understand this method a lot better. The first way is by using something called neutral tint. So neutral tint is kind of like a gray neutral color that is sold in a tube or a pan by a few different manufacturers of watercolor paint that I know of. Winsor Newton, Daniel Smith, probably others sell a neutral tint. And you can purchase one of those tubes or pans, and you can use that alongside all of the colors from your tubes and your pans. And as long as you're mixing a little bit of that neutral tint color into all of the pure pigments that you're using, you're gonna achieve something very, very close to what I'm achieving here. And that achievement is really just harmony of color. So sometimes, or maybe even a lot of times, when we are creating art and we're using many different pigments, they don't necessarily look harmonious together. And using the mother method is my surefire way of achieving a sort of color harmony. So the second way that I know of to achieve the mother method color harmony is by mixing up your own neutral tint. Now, I have never done this, but I've heard it can be done. Some people have mixes that they swear by and they think are, the most magical thing, and I'm sure they are. I've just never tried that. So I'm just going to talk about the way that I've been doing it for years, and I find that it's really, really fun and pretty exciting for me. Now, another thing to note is that this is not necessarily a method for people who really, really enjoy the way the colors look when they come straight out of the tube. So there is a neutralness to the colors that I'm painting on the page that is something that I really enjoy. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't also love, a straight up opera pink or a straight up helio turquoise or a straight up transparent yellow. I do like all of those things, but I mostly like those as just contrasts to the neutral tones that I paint with. So now I'm going to talk about just the way that I employ this idea of the mother method. The first thing to notice is that I'm not rinsing the pigment out of my brush pretty much ever when I paint this way. If I go over to my jar of water over there on the left, it's just to pick up some more water with my brush, but not to actually rinse out pigment. So that's pretty much the basic, most important thing to know, is that every time I go into another well in my palette, I have all of the residual pigment that I've picked up from the last time I painted, and also, really all the pigment that has been sitting in my brush from when I started painting. And those pigments are mixing in with the new pigments that I'm picking up. And as I do this more and more, each one of those wells that I'm pulling from and mixing into just becomes more and more harmonious with all of the other wells. I'm not starting out with a large variety of pigments from the tubes that I'm putting in. I have a pretty limited palette. It's an interesting palette that I really like. It's not a typical primary palette, but I'm not employing a ton of different colors. Like, you can do the mother method and you can have 3 to 5 different tube colors, or, you know, just basic pigments, and you can achieve almost every color under the sun by using this mother method. And it's kind of like contrary to maybe how you think things should go. Like, that well that I'm mixing into right now, that's opera pink. That's a very, very, very bright pink. But I'm mixing whatever is in my brush in with it, or picking up a little bit of another color from the palette that I just think, you know, hey, I'd like to try to see what this looks like. So there I am, I'm going into that orange color, I'm mixing it into the opera pink, and I'm just seeing, you know, it's like, it doesn't even make sense that this is gonna look good, but you're gonna see as I paint these stripes that the pink that I'm achieving is just, it has way more depth than opera pink, and it's just way more exciting to me as I'm painting to see what is coming out on the page. Like, what kinds of interesting colors can I achieve? I clearly was having a lot of fun playing with those two colors, just mixing more and more of the orange color in with the pink color to see, you know, what would happen there. And it just got more and more beautiful. And then I'm going into one of my other wells that just has, you know, so many pigments probably in there. It's almost like a neutral tint of its own that's just developed over years of painting with this palette. And I've got all that orangey color in my brush, and I pick up some of the just neutralized bunch of colors in that well, and then I achieve a pretty beautiful brown color. And then I'm like, oh, let me see what happens if I even have more of a percentage of this color from that well. I don't even have names for these colors anymore because they're just so mixed up at this point, but I think it's really quite beautiful. Another thing that I want to point out is every time I go back into one of the wells with the pigment, I'm going to be picking up a different amount of pigment based on the next color that I'm trying to achieve in my mind. Sometimes I'm picking up a lot of what is in the well and mixing around a lot in there and really kind of turning the whole well into a new color. And other times I'm just taking a tiny bit of a pure pigment and I'm only mixing into just a little bit of the color in the well plus the water that's in the well. And it's kind of an intuitive practice that you pick up over time, and you sort of start to understand and know how much water, how much pigment do I need in order to achieve a new color, and even the color that I think I can achieve. I mean, I do think you get to the point where you have a sense of what color you're going to be achieving, and it's a little less random and a little less scary. But I'm not always going and grabbing a ton of water and using my paintbrush to mix the entire well of color and make a whole new color in that well. I can just pick up a little bit of pigment and water from the well, and it's going to mix in that brush, and it's going to mix when I'm moving that paintbrush on the page. It's going to do that mixing. So here you're going to see that again. It's just, I'm just grabbing a little bit of that pigment from that well, and I know that I'm going to achieve a different color than the one that I painted before. I'm gonna speed this video up a little bit and let you watch me finish painting the page, but I'm just gonna keep using that same mother method and enjoying myself as I see what colors I can bring to life. And I do find this really, really relaxing. It doesn't matter what shape that I paint. It's just the experience of mixing the water with the pigments, putting the brush onto the page, laying down the color, seeing what comes out. And I don't know, I just find it really relaxing. I hope you give it a try, and I hope you find it relaxing too.